welcome in to Triple Zeros. I'm your host, Josh Buckalter. This is the Anti-Hot Take Sports Show. Follow me on Twitter at Josh G. Buck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com, email address, clockersports@gmail.com. And of course, you can follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at 3zerospod. That's number three, zeros and pod. And of course, I'm always happy to be talk the Bears and the Chicago Bulls. As you know, covering the Bulls, the Bears, and the Atlanta Hawks. You can't always cover just those two. Also, I like to talk a lot about every other team as well in both the NBA and the NFL. But whenever I do want to get into the Bulls and the Bears, I cheat and bring on some guests to help me do so. And to really just kind of, give me a reason to dig deeper into those two teams. Like I said, I can't always get into them like I want to. So to do that, I brought on a very special guest, Scott Lewis, better known as Barberchair Scott on Twitter. You can follow him on Twitter at Barberchair Scott. That's at Barberchair Scott. He is the founder of Barberchair's Network, the host of the I'm Not Gonna Hold You podcast, and the co-host of 79th and Hallis podcast. And that in particular is why we brought him here. The 79th and Hallis and Chicago spin. He's a Chicago sports loyalist per his bio. So Scott, first and foremost, thank you for joining us on the show, man.
Oh man, Josh, thank you for having me on, bro. I appreciate it.
I'm gonna get right into it because I like I said, I told you off air, I follow your stuff. I really love your opinions and love your taste because there's not a better follow really on Twitter right now when it comes to one of these things. Because like I said, I go off on this a lot on this podcast, but I get kind of enamored with the Chicago sports media because it's kind of watered down a lot of the times. You don't really get, I feel like, what they really want to say. So I appreciate whenever you get people that come out there and do share that. And on top of that, it's always good to see brothers doing their thing in media. And I really love what you guys have built with the Barberchair Network. Shout out to you guys, you and your brother Joe, all you guys over there. Really big fan of your stuff. So
appreciate it, man. Appreciate it.
No doubt. With the Bears coming off of a 6-11 season, they quote unquote cleaned house. You still got George and Ted off in the shadows running things. What is your take on the hirings? Matt Eberflus, they brought in I always forget the guy's name. Luke Getsy as the offensive coordinator. Alan Williams is going to be the defensive coordinator. Where are you at right now with the Bears and their hirings?
I'm cautiously optimistic. I said that on our podcast we did last night. Like, I don't want to get too high with this team because it's like as a lifelong Bears fan, every time you get too high, they bring you right back down to size. But I think with such a point, I won't say pointless season, but it was just kind of like a season that was just there. Like I kind of feel like I didn't feel anything. I didn't care if they win or they lost for the first time in my life. Like the only real great part about it was Justin Fields and being able to actually cover the team for the first time this year. I was actually seeing it front hand, and just to see just all the stuff that with the Nagi regime, with the Pace regime, and seeing how just how in a month things have changed. And I just like the whole process that they went through. Like, we'll never really know if Ryan Poles, if Matt Eberflus are the best hires until maybe 3 years from now. Maybe we're sitting up here in 2025 and we'll know. But I like the process. I like how they brought in a veteran like Bill Polian. Now, I was kind of skeptical at first because Bill Polian doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame for a reason, but he's an older guy, you know what I'm saying? And, his takes on Lamar Jackson were a little concerning too, especially when your franchise player is also a black quarterback who, has similar strengths. I think Justin is a way better passer, but, similar strengths to Lamar. So that kind of confused me a little bit, but his process was great. They interviewed everybody, a lot of black candidates, which I liked. And one thing that really stood out to me as we look at the Brian Flores situation right now, the Bears interviewed Brian Flores twice, and he must have actually thought he had a good chance of getting that job because they weren't in that lawsuit. So that was something there that stood out to me. But I think Ryan Poles is a great hire because of not just him being with the Chiefs and their winning organization they got over there, but he's been through 3 different regimes over there. And anytime a new general manager, a new president gets hired, the current staff usually doesn't come back. So the fact that he stayed with 3 different staffs and he got a promotion each time, and he's a younger guy, that stood out to me. And then when I found out he's part of the team that drafted scouted Patrick Mahomes, that's pretty much the icing on the cake right there. And Eberflus, I didn't know too much about him. I watched Indianapolis Colts Hard Knocks this past season, so I knew of him, and I knew from seeing him in defensive coordinator rooms. But I love the staff that he's brought in. You know what I'm saying? And I really think having an offensive coach, I know a lot of people are upset about that, is a kind of bit overrated because I feel like sometimes they're thinking more about calling plays more than they are about being a leader of the team. We see that even as bad as Nagy was calling plays, how he would juggle between that. And even just looking at the NFC Championship game this past week with McVay and Shanahan, they were having like a dumbass competition who could outthink each other more. You know what I'm saying? And so I know that as a defensive guy, he's brought in offensive coordinator and Luke Getsy. And I know a lot of people like, well, anybody can make Aaron Rodgers look good. But when I saw the clip of Rodgers saying how much he loved Getsy, and then we had I forgot his name, Jones, who's played for the Packers. He was his tight end. He said on his podcast that Aaron wanted him to be the offensive coordinator. So that tells you a lot about that staff, and to know that Eberflus is not going to be calling defensive plays. He's going to let Alan Williams, new defensive coordinator, handle that. I think I like what they're doing, and now it's just about them getting to work.
Let's touch on that part about the whole Nagy regime and everything. Now, like you said, you covered him for the first time this season. I got to see the last couple of games up close and personal and ask him a couple of questions. But how did you come away from that feeling about him? How the team might have viewed? Let me try that again. How did you come away from that feeling? How the team might have viewed him as a person, as opposed to what we read about in that report from The Athletic that came out after the season?
Well, I think for the most part, the team didn't have a problem with him as a person. I just think he was a shit leader. And as we see that more and more, and, we can talk about Trubisky. I think two things can be true about Trubisky. One, he was a bad quarterback, but also at the same time, he was never really given a chance to actually get a chance to be even okay. I mean, if you look at the situation he's brought in here, he's brought him to with a coach who didn't want him. Actually, two coaches didn't want him. John Fox wanted Deshaun Watson, and Nagy didn't want Mitch. And then to come in that situation and having to learn from Mike Glennon, which is asinine, which is, is not a guy you learn from. And then they see that, they had an all-season meeting and Nagy said, let's meet, and Nagy never showed up. And then we hear the same thing. That Allen Robinson said the same thing. So he was just a bad leader. As far as a person, and from the few times that I've spoken to Matt Nagy, he seems like a cool guy. Like, I wouldn't have a problem having a beer with Matt Nagy. I'm not saying anything about him personally, but he's just not a good football coach. He's not a good leader of men. And I think that was the biggest part of it. And I think they honestly tuned him out. Like, I feel like a lot of that season was just the players going through the motions. And really, some of the newer guys like Justin, I felt like Justin wasn't attached to him. So, like, when we saw he got fired, you saw guys like Eddie Jackson, Roquan Smith, guys like that thanking him because they got drafted either the year before or the year his first year. So they have more of a relationship with him. Justin comes into it and he don't really have a relationship with him, especially the fact he's trying to sit him a whole year. So he basically like, whatever y'all do is going to be about here in a minute. It's going to be my franchise. And you even saw that in the conference last week when they introduced Flukes and Pools. I think having Justin up there was very significant to let everybody know this is our guy. You know what I'm saying? And Justin saying, well, last year it was hard for me to be a leader when I've got Andy breathing behind my back. So long story short, I think that they liked him as a person, but just as a coach, they tuned him out. And I think that you're going to see a whole different, response to them, to at least Flukes. Because it seems like now Flukes is not going to be a coach that's going to take any shit, and which is why I like.
That was actually one of the things that I had talked about throughout the season, in like the middle of it. Like, it just seemed like as they got, well, it wasn't even seeming like, it was obvious that as they got further removed from him winning that 14 or that 12-4 season, that fewer and fewer guys were actually buying into what he was putting down. They could just tell. And it also was obvious from what we heard from him in his post-game press conferences to what was actually happening, that maybe he was just trying to, put lipstick on a pig, but he was selling us a bill of goods that just wasn't the case. And his perception versus reality kind of is what I was going to ask you next about this team. Now, you talked about the process, and I've been big on how their process from the beginning was sound. They didn't wind up with anybody that I wanted on my list. I'm not even going to lie about it. But I was very happy with the pool of candidates, and honestly didn't mind them going outside to Bill Polian, a guy who came highly regarded until he started working with the Bears, and then all of a sudden became a problem. Where are you at on the perception versus reality on how they've gone about it and what people are actually saying about it?
Well, I think what people are saying about it is always that, it's the Bears, so they're going to fuck it up. National media, I think a lot of Bears fans get upset at the Bears media because, they're too negative. And actually, before I became a part of media, I thought the same way. And then I started meeting some of these guys, and I'm like, okay, I understand. Because even when I was going to some of these games, I was like, I'm just tired of watching bad football. And this is my first season, so I can only imagine how dudes been watching decades of this shit feel. So you got to look at it from that perspective. But I feel like the national and the local perspective is they don't know what they're doing. We got to wait to see. You know what I'm saying? Now I feel like inside they feel like it's great. And I feel like a lot of the fans too feel like it's a good process. But the Bears aren't going to get the benefit of doubt from the fan base, from local media or outside media until they actually start winning.
So, in order to start winning, you got to have the horses. What is your take on this roster right now?
Well, right now I feel like the roster is you have some pieces, like you got your Justin Fields, you got your Darnell Mooney's, Dave Montgomery's. On the defensive end, you've got Roquan Smith, who I think is a dog. You've got potential in Jalen Johnson, who's been great his first 2 years. Khalil Mack is a dog, Roquan Smith. But overall, I still think there's a huge talent gap on this team offensively. Like, you got to have multiple playmakers. As much as I like Darnell Mooney, I don't think Darnell Mooney is a number one wide receiver. He might be a number two. I think he's personally a three on a real good team. Like, you put him on the Rams right now, he's the third best receiver. Maybe fourth if you include their tight end. So that, to me, I feel like they have a lot of work to do in that department to get them skilled guys. Like, and this is no disrespect to Allen Robinson, but even when he's playing well, I don't think he's playmaking like a game changer wide receiver. He's no Devontae Adams. He's no Mike Evans, Cooper Kupp. And you need that to win a championship. So Poles has got his work cut out for him, especially with only 5 draft picks.
Yeah, and he talked about moving on to get some more draft picks. If you were the GM, if you were Poles right now, who are you keeping? Who are you moving on from to try to get some of that draft capital back?
I'm as far as the draft, I'm not against anybody outside of Justin Fields and Roquan Smith being traded. To me, those are the only untradables. Like I don't think that they'll trade Khalil Mack because one, the dead cap hit is huge this year. That's one, and also two, he's such a big leader in the locker room, man. It's not like he's been bad. He just ain't been healthy the last 2 seasons. I mean, he had 6-7 sacks before he got hurt this year. He was looking like 2018 Mac. But I don't really know if there's anybody that can trade, like, honestly, that you can get much value back for. Because Ryan Pace left this franchise in such a bad situation to where it's like there's really not much you can do. Like, I'm sure they're I seen like a hypothetical trade on the Twitter timeline yesterday. Somebody said, if somebody offered you a second and a fifth rounder for David Montgomery, would you do it? I'm like, I do it in a heartbeat, but no team is that damn stupid to give up a second rounder for a running back. And I love David Montgomery. I actually think he's a top 10 back in the league, but we're in an era where running backs are disposable. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you look at the 2 teams that's in the championship right now. I mean, they have a 2-back system in LA with Cam Akers and Sonny Michel. And Joe Mixon is great too, but Joe Mixon is still early in his career. So you don't see these mega deals going to these running backs anymore. So if you had an opportunity like that, yeah, I would do it. But he's going to have to really finesse a little bit to get more than 5 draft picks, because there's a lot of big holes on this thing, specifically on the offensive line. I think that's where they're going to have to get in free agency, because you got to keep Justin healthy. That's the number one thing. We even seen with the number one reason the Buccaneers lost to the Rams is Brady's center got hurt and they got him on his ass. So you need the offensive line.
I think that might have been the most encouraging part about Poles is when he came in and started talking about how he didn't like how they didn't protect Justin Fields last year. That made me mad too, sitting up there watching. Just being on the ground and nobody coming to help him up. Him going to the sideline and nobody coming to cheer him up. Like, it was weird to see that for the team's franchise, future of the franchise, and a rookie to be left alone like that in a group that was supposed to be full of veteran leadership. That was very odd to me the entire season. So I love that he addressed that initially. Now we were talking about the fact that Pace left them in such a shambles. How big of a part do you think that may have played in who they ended up with? Do you think that these are their top choices, or do you think that maybe because they left themselves in such a bad mess by keeping Pace and Nagy around for that extra year, they kind of limited their choices?
Well, like, as far as like the draft, or
no, as far as who they brought in, and as far as the polls and Eberflus.
Oh no, I think these were like a real actual like search. Like, these were guys who they wanted. Like, my biggest question when they fired Pace and Nagy were, are you going to get the right guys? Because we even seen with Ryan Pace, when Ryan Pace got hired, he wanted to hire Dan Quinn, and the George and them were like, no, you're still young. We want a veteran with you. We're gonna give you John Fox. I'm like, is Poles gonna actually have free reign to do what he wants? And then everything we found out, it has been him. George has been real. He's been involved, but I feel like he's taking a page from what Michael Reinsdorf has been doing with the Bulls. Like, I'm gonna let AK and Eversley do what the fuck they want. I would just sign the check. So I feel like that's the direction we're going. I think a key thing we saw Ted Phillips, while he was at the press conference, a lot of people on Barberchair, he wasn't there. And he was there. They just had him in the not saying anything. I think that's huge that they're telling Ted, just worry about building our damn stadium. We're not going to have you involved with football. So I do think these were just Ryan Poles' choices. And Ryan Poles even said in his interview with us and on the press conference that if he wanted to have other people in his search, he could have added him. He was just blown away by fluke. So I do think that these were his actual choices.
Before we transition, what are your projections for this coming season, if you have any?
I have none. I have absolutely zero. I mean, there's a lot of questions. We got to see if Aaron Rodgers is coming back or not. That's a huge decision. If he comes back, then I'm not expecting much. Because it's still going to be his division. If he doesn't come back, I think it speeds it up a little bit. As far as Minnesota's going to be the favorite just because people still think Kirk Cousins is good for whatever damn reason. I don't understand. And, just the Bears have not earned the benefit of the doubt. So even if he's gone, the Vikings are still going to be the favorite. But I have no expectations, none. I feel like even if they go out there and have a great season, I'm going to let this whole thing play out because Nagy and them went 12-4 their first year, won a division title. We're thinking, we're about to enter another Bears golden era. No, sir. So I need to watch this play out at least 2 years. I need at least 2 years, but I have none. The number one, I just want Justin to have a great year. Justin Fields has to have a great year because if he doesn't work out, it don't matter who the hell you got to coach. Who's your GM? Because as we've seen in today's league with the Mahomes and the Allens and the Burrows, if you ain't got you an elite quarterback, you don't have a shot in hell. So I think that's the only thing I'm expecting to see Justin Fields have a really, really good year and assert himself in this new young quarterback discussion.
And you brought it up. The hope is that Poles and Eberflus can have a similar effect that Arturas Karnisovas and now Billy Donovan have had on Chicago Bulls. So let's talk about the Bulls. They are 33-19. They are first place in the East, and they are 5-2 in their last 7 games. If you don't know, that's surprising because they're missing like half their damn team.
Yeah.
And not only are they missing half their damn team, they're missing their best defenders. And to be like completely honest about it, their defense has plummeted. This is one of the best defensive teams in the league when they were healthy.
Yep.
Their defense has plummeted to the bottom third of the league. What is your take on these Bulls right now?
Yeah, I mean, number one, give Alex Caruso Defense Player of the Year. I mean, just off the fact that when he was playing, this was a top 7 defense, and now they're like 18 or 19. And I think the encouraging thing for this team is offensively, they can't be touched. I mean, this is a team that put up 125 last night, and this is without Kobe White. This is without Zach LaVine, and of course, Patrick Williams, Alex Caruso, Zoe, and fucking Patrick. I mean, I just said Patrick Williams. We've missed so many damn people I don't forget. So, what I'm saying? The defense has been horrendous. It has been terrible to watch. And I just hate watching bad defense. But I will say this is they're finding ways to win. Like you said, they're 5-2 in their last 7. This is coming off a 4-game losing streak. And to have your heartbeat of your defense be gone, you're missing 2 starters. And Zach LaVine, 3 starters actually. Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, and now Lonzo Ball. And you're missing key guys. So I got to give it up to Ayo Dosunmu. Where would this season be without Ayo? You know what I'm saying? And I said on the Third Pick podcast, our Bulls podcast, when he got drafted, that I felt it was going to be the steal of the draft. But even me thinking it was going to be still, I didn't think he was going to be this damn good. It's to the point where I don't even know where this team will be without him. He stepped up. DeMar has been amazing. I mean, we can't say much more about DeMar. And Vucevic is finally hooping like Orlando Vuce. I mean, he had 31 and 17 last night against Indiana. So I think they're doing enough to hold together, but you got a tough stretch coming up. We got a back-to-back at home coming up against Philly, coming up against Phoenix, and then you got Charlotte next week. They're a tough team. So I expect trade deadlines coming up on Thursday. I expect this team to be much different by this time next week. I think that they're going to find, I don't know who they're going to get. And that's the one thing I love about AK and Eversley. They're very, very quiet. I think even Brian Brindhorst said it's very hard to tell what the Bulls are going to do because they keep it, so close to them. Like even last year when we got Vooch, that wasn't even a rumor. It literally came out of fucking nowhere. So one thing I've learned in AK's short time, he can make water into wine. You know what I'm saying? And he did that with look at how bad Lauri Markkanen was. And you were able to get Derrick Jones Jr. and a first rounder for him. So I think he's going to find a way. He's going to get some wings who can be able to defend. I mean, there's been names thrown around, that they could possibly get. And so I'm interested to see, but I do think that he'll get enough to hold the fort down defensively until Caruso and Zoe come back, and there's even we're hearing that Patrick Williams might be back. So one last thing I will say, the bad thing is all these guys are out at the same time, but the great thing is that they're probably all going to come back at the same time. And I made the analogy, it's going to be like that final scene in Avengers Endgame where everybody was on the front line, like, the Bulls assemble. You're going to get everybody coming at the same time, and it's going to be great rolling into the playoffs, because I feel if healthy, I feel like this team can compete with anybody. So I'm interested to see. But as far as the overall season, I mean, it's been a blast. It's much of these last month and a half has been irritating because of injuries. It's been fun. And I think Bulls fans just need to relax, stop worrying so much about the injuries, and just enjoy the ride.
I totally agree with you. And one of the things that you talked about was DeMar DeRozan. And I want to talk about him because we all know the big story coming in was that he was the worst signing and blah, blah,
Yep.
blah. I was quick to be like, hold on, y'all. Like, let's not act like San Antonio wasn't a really, low on talent. And like, this is not him going into a better supporting cast. And then we saw AK put around Zoe and Caruso, and they built a real roster around it. So when people were still down, I was really surprised. But then the conversation kind of switched and became about who's the top guy on this team between Zach and DeMar. And while I'm not going to hold you, not going to hold you.
No pun intended.
DeMar has been in the MVP conversation this year for his exploits, but I'm still of the belief that I'm not sure there's a clear number one, in that there's going to be a time when you need Zach LaVine to be Zach LaVine. And because of how their playing styles are so different, they balance each other out so well that I don't think that even really matters. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I agree. I do think still Zach LaVine is the best player on this team, and I think people will stop playing with Zach's name. Like I be saying, if you like Zach, I seen it was like I think they played the Warriors, and somebody on ESPN was like, and DeMar DeRozan's sidekick. I'm like, it's not his fucking sidekick. Like you don't get announced last in the starting lineup in Bulls games, you get a sidekick. So this is Zach LaVine's team. Zach LaVine is the best player on this team. But as far as like how they match, I mean, it's perfect. It fits well like a glove. I kind of compare it to, not to that extent, obviously, because they won championships, but when Rodman joined the Bulls, like everybody's like, how's Rodman gonna fit with Jordan and Pippen? Pippen and Rodman don't even like each other from the Bad Boys days. He came in, it was like they had been playing for years. And it's the same thing with DeMar and Zach. They complement each other so fucking well. Now, when the playoffs come, I think there's going to be a big question mark for the Bulls' big three in general. You got DeMar, a guy who's historically not been well in the playoffs. Let's just keep it buck. He stank in the playoffs when he was in Toronto. I think they had a one playoff appearance with San Antonio. He was okay, but the pressure wasn't like what it was in Toronto. They had an actual shot to make it to the final. So he's going to have some question marks to show people that I can actually be good in the playoff series with things online. Zach has never been to a playoffs before. Zoe has never been to a playoffs before. Vooch has been in the playoffs, but he wasn't that good in the last playoffs they played. So all of them have equal questions, but I feel like there's never going to be a issue of who should get the ball last. I think it's really just who's feeling it. And that's a great problem to have. Even looking kind of like in Miami, Wade and Bron will feed off each other. There'll be some games in the playoffs, Wade took the last shot. There'll be some games LeBron took the last shot. I think it's going to be like that. But I think that my number one concern for Zach that I don't worry about with DeMar is Zach does too much sometimes at the end of games. Like sometimes in the games he gets Westbrooky. He just, he starts catching the balls like Ted Ginn. He's not catching it well, and he just starts shooting from half court and shit. So I want him to calm down a little bit. And DeMar is like the calming force for the team. But really with the playoffs, it's a whole different game. So I don't really know how it's going to be when it comes because there's so many question marks for everybody. But I feel confident for the first time as a Bulls fan since the Jordan years that it's not going to be a one-on-one thing. The number one thing when Derek was here, he never had any damn help. That Miami Heat series makes me so damn angry because especially game 4 when it went to overtime, he was out there going 1-on-5. Lou Dane wasn't helping him. Carlos Boozer wasn't helping him. That's not going to be a problem here. You know what I'm saying? You're going to have DeMar. You're going to have Vooch. And there might be some games where Zoe just, gets hot from the three-point line. And we see what we get from Ayo. Ayo might be a playoff hero. Caruso won a championship. So you have all these elements here it's a complete team and the best offensive team I've seen since 23 left the building. So I think that they'll find a way to work it out, but it's not a problem. There's no ego thing between these two. Oh, it's my team. And I think that's the best thing for the Bulls.
The one thing I push back on every time somebody mentions it is DeMar DeRozan's playoff. I am of the belief, and I know I'm probably on an island on this, but that it wasn't as bad for him as people like to think it was. I think that it was a lot to do with Kyle Lowry not being there for most of those runs.
But that's a good point. Not to cut you off. That's a good point. He wasn't there for most of the runs. And also, with all due respect to Kyle Lowry, he's not the scorer that Zach LaVine is. So there was a lot more pressure against him. And also to keep it about, he was losing LeBron. I mean, it's not like they're losing to somebody else. They were losing to fucking LeBron.
Yeah, that's the only thing I put. I just always mention, like, let's go back and look at who was there, because other than, I think it was the last one only that DeMar wasn't healthy for. Other than that, Kyle was constantly on the sidelines and on the bench and not showing. So it is what it is, and it's revisionist history regardless. They got, like you said, they have a lot to prove. Vucevic, though, is a guy that I think is very interesting. We've got the meme that floating around on Twitter right now about the life cycle of Vuce and how you chip. Yeah. Plays bad, we boo him. He plays well. We're back around. We're coming off of a good game. Looking at Vuce, how do you feel about him? And then, if you had a chance, do you think that the Bulls, seeing how it's happening now with him out in Orlando, you think that they would have done the trade again for switching him for Wendell Carter Jr.?
Oh, 100%. 10 out of 10, you do it again for multiple reasons. One, Wendell Carter's not good. Let's just get that out of there. He only plays well against the Bulls. He's not a good player. You know,
he definitely has his best games against.
He only has his best games against the Bulls. If he played like that 82 games out the year, then the Magic would not have 11 wins. So that number one, you do it all over again, and also you do it all over again because he was a big factor in getting DeMar here. DeMar, remember, they were teammates at USC. DeMar said he wanted to come here because of Vooch, because of Zach, and they actually were talking about it last year when he got traded, when they played San Antonio, is when the idea first sparked. So yes, you do it all over again. But I've called myself a Vooch apologist. I feel like a lot of people comparing him to Carlos Boozer. I'm like, if Carlos Boozer rebounded as good as Vooch, we wouldn't hate him the way he does. So that's the issue I had with that. Vooch, I think, had to get used to being the third option. He is so used to being the number one option. And then even last year, in his first year with the Bulls, he was the number two option. So now you're the third option. And not only are the third option, you got a point guard, Alonzo, who has the ball a lot in his hands. Caruso has a lot in his hands. So he doesn't have the ball all the time. So I feel like it took a while for him to adjust. Now, his shooting, his actual jump shot has been kind of broke. But what we've seen these last, I say 7-8 games, he's getting back in the post. He's realizing, hey, I'm 7 feet. Can't nobody stop me out here. Let me get in the post. And that's what he's been doing more. And that's just been making his game better. And I think he's finally clicking. And I think it's going to pay off tremendously.
You nailed it, him getting down in the post more often, because that's what frustrates me the most about him. And really all big guys, when they don't use their size to their advantage.
I hate big guys shooting. I'm old school with that.
And get down in the post and beat anybody up, bro. Especially against a team like Indiana, who didn't have anybody over 6'7", I believe, when they played last night. So I'm with you on that. The other question I have about him is, I think he could actually be the most effective member of the big three in the postseason because of his height advantage and his skills. His ability to pass and shoot from the top of the key is something that is going to make a lot of teams have to invert their defense, which is going to help pull cutters off the wings, which is what they really need, because they're not going to be stopping too many people, even when they get their best defenders back in the half-court set. So I feel like getting Vooch involved now has been kind of one of the best, or getting him involved in this way recently, rather, has been one of the better moves Billy has made in his this year coaching the team. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. And it's also Vooch too. Vooch got to get aggressive. Like, there's only so much the coach can do for you. And I think he finally realized, let me get in the post. And I think he is going to be that valuable in the playoffs. And I think he'll be even more valuable if and when AK gets some bigger, like a backup center, a backup power forward, who their job is just to rebound and to kick motherfuckers out the club. Like, they don't know, and that makes him more effective, because now all he got to do is score and rebound. And I think actually defensively, Vooch has not been that bad this year. I think defensively, he's been okay compared to what we've seen. So I think he'll be very more. What you say?
He's got to be in the right position. That's the problem. When he gets caught out of position, that he gets.
Yeah, sometimes he moves like his feet are in cement, but for the most part, he's done pretty well. So I think once more people are added, like, to help the defense, is gonna make him even better. But I think that I love Vooch, man. I'm a big Vooch fan, so I'm gonna keep riding with him, and I think he's gonna be a big factor come playoff time.
Would you trade Kobe or Pat to get some of that big man help that you're talking about?
I'm not trading Patrick Williams though. I definitely trade Kobe, especially with Io making him more dispensable, more tradable. I actually think Io makes Zoe tradable in about a year. Like, I think Io has starter potential, like we've seen from him. I always said I think Jokic is going to be a Bull next offseason. I'm just pretty set on it. He's a free agent. Denver's not really doing what they're supposed to be doing. AK drafted him. Chicago has the biggest Serbian population in the United States. I think it just matches up. So I would not be shocked if Ayo continues on this streak that he's on, that if Lonzo might be part of a signing trade for him. So I definitely would, trade Kobe. The messed up part is like you still need Kobe scoring until you get healthy. But if there's an actual trade for him, I trade him. Now, Patrick Williams, I don't trade him unless I'm getting like a star back. And not that I feel like, he's too. I don't want to say like I expect too much from him. I think I'm pretty high on Pat, but you still have to see what you got in him before you trade him. You don't want a George Hill, Kawhi Leonard situation to where the Pacers didn't know what they had in Kawhi. So once you got, Pat is only 20. Like Ayo's older than Pat. Like Pat is only 20 years old. And I want to see what I get from him before I decide to make that move. And I think that AK knows that too. I mean, that was his first draft pick. And I can't see it, AK giving up on his first track, especially for somebody like fucking Jeremy Grant. So I think that he'll be here.
I'm with you on Jeremy. I'm a fan of Jeremy Grant, but I think
I am too. But he think he's fucking Anthony Davis. Like,
yeah, we're not that family. Like, it's definitely not that. I'm finding it interesting that you said you can't trade Pat. I do understand the logic though, and that you want to see what you have in him first. I just think that it's funny because a lot of the sentiment has shifted in the other direction, in that Kobe is the one who's now a little bit less dispensable, and you can kind of move Pat Will because you can't wait on him forever. But I don't disagree with what you said at all. In that you don't
also with Kobe, you gotta pay him soon. So it's like you might want to get something for Kobe now. If you got Ayo, and Ayo's got a weird contract where Ayo is going to be an unrestricted free agent after next year.
You got
so. If I got to choose right now, and Kobe's been here, this is third year? Yeah. I've seen more from Ayo consistently this season than I've seen for Kobe in 3 years. Mm-hmm. And that's why I would get rid of him.
No, I don't disagree with that at all. I do find it interesting though that a lot of the conversation for the Bulls has been about them improving while they're still sitting first. And I get it. We all know that they can't stand, or how would I say this? It's not going to be a cakewalk no matter where they finish.
Oh, hell no.
But I think most people, like on the inside, kind of like with the Bears fan base, where the inside is different than what the perception is outside. A lot of people around the Bulls Nation understand that they're so beat up, right? That they're basically getting another lineup back when everybody gets healthy. And I think that's kind of why you see some of the uncertainty between the two.
Well, even with the East, like with the playoffs, unless you're the first 1 or 2 seed, and you can face the 7 to 8 seed, you can see like the Knicks or Atlanta or like Boston or one of them. These first round series are gonna be some wars. Like, so you need to be healthy. You need to have your guys ready. The East is gonna be like how the West used to be this last couple of years. So it's like I said, it's not gonna be a cakewalk.
And to be honest, either one of those teams, the New York, the Celtics, or Atlanta, can get hot and go off on you. So you don't really want to have to, worry about.
I'm not worried about the Knicks in the slightest. Like I'm not worried about the Knicks whatsoever. I told their fan base this last year. I told them that Trae Young was going to do them dirty, but the Celtics, because they have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they can be a threat, but I'm not worried about one person on the New York Knicks at all.
All right. So just like I had you do with the Bulls, let's have you play Carter Silvers right now. If you had to make a trade, who are you going to get to help this team right now?
Well, from just off the top of it, I mean, I wouldn't mind Jeremy Grant. The main issue with Jeremy Grant is he wants a big contract coming up. And I think he even said he wants a big contract. So I think that'll be the only concern. But but people say a lot of shit. When people get into a winning situation, they might change their opinion on things like, yo, you come help us get a ring or at least get to the finals. We'll worry about that contract shit when it comes. The center in San Antonio, I wish I could pronounce the name. Begins with a P. Hurdle. Yeah. He's been a topic of discussion, maybe with the Bulls. I would love to see him. He doesn't have the best shot, but he rebounds and he defends, and that would be perfect compliment to Vooch. He's there. I've heard rumors of Dennis Schroeder, and I know a lot of people like, I don't want fucking Dennis Schroeder, which I understand, but Schroeder also had his best years with Billy Donovan when he's playing in Oklahoma City. And if you get rid of Kobe, I think Schroeder is an upgrade over Kobe. And I think that'd be somebody who you could get for the low price. Because the real thing right here is Bulls don't have that many assets to get up. I think majority of who we're going to see is going to be in the buyout. I think we'll get a couple people in trade. But from what it's looking like, from everything I'm hearing, it's looking like unless the Nets find somebody, give them a draft pick for Paul Millsap, and I don't think any team is that dumb. but that he's going to be released and he wants to come to the Bulls. So I wouldn't be shocked if we get Paul Millsap, Dennis Schroeder, and maybe somebody else. I think Jeremy Grant would be a home run, though. I love how he matches with this team. It's just about getting him focused on not worrying about a contract.
Do you think that they go after Schroeder and keep Kobe, or do you think that they only go?
No, I think they only go out the street because then you have too many guards, because when Caruso and Zoe get back, and you got Zoe, Caruso, Kobe, Schroeder, and Ayo. That's way too many damn guards. So no, I think there's one guy who I'm sure is gonna be gone next week. There's like two people that I'm like pretty damn sure that bags be packed, and that's but Kobe and Troy Brown Jr. Please get Troy Brown Jr. off my team. Like
it's frustrating to say.
Yeah, I think them two will be gone.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Hey, man, thank you so much, Barberchair, Scott. I really love having you on the show, man. Got to have you back again. You guys do great work, like I said. Founder of the Barberchair Network, host of I'm Not Gonna Hold You, co-host of 79th and House and the Third Pick podcast. Follow him on Twitter at Barberchair Scott. And, of course, until the very next time, man, we gone.